Chen Ping thought that if he touched the stone during the day, he could touch it from Liu Xiaoning and go upstream to the corridor bridge. So tonight he chose the upstream of the first launching position, so he would be far away from the corridor bridge and the blue stone cliff called Qingyi Bay in the local dialect. That is, the place where Chen Ping first saw the girl in blue. He also missed the meeting with Song Jixin and the supervisor. On the other side of the corridor bridge, there is a plaque with the words "Wind rises and water rises" under his leadership. Song Jixin came to the bottom of the steps of the corridor bridge. Before coming, he not only bathed and dressed in the official office, but also hung a sachet and a dragon-shaped jade pendant with ordinary material. The color was dim and insignificant. On the contrary, the old dragon blue jade pendant, which should be more colorful in terms of texture, appearance, and moral meaning, was forcibly removed by the man and must not be hung. Song Jixin held 3 incense sticks in his hand, and the boy stood under the steps at a loss. Shang Changjing, king of Dali Fan, turned around and stretched out a hand. He gently twisted his fingers on the top of the 3 incense sticks, and the incense was ignited. The man said casually, after kneeling down, "Face the plaque, knock 3 heads, insert the incense on the ground, and it's over." Although Song Jixin was full of doubts, he knelt down and called out 3 times according to the uncle who fell from the sky. Although the man spoke lightly, after the boy knelt down, his face was dignified and very complex. Looking at the ground where the boy called out, he showed a deep hatred. After inserting the 3 incense sticks into the ground and getting up, Song Jixin asked, "It doesn't matter to incense here." The man smiled and said, "It's just a ceremony. Don't worry too much. From now on, learn to play on the occasion first. Otherwise you may be too busy in the future." The man put away his smile. "Just don't forget that this corridor bridge is your LONGXING place." Song Jixin's lips were dark blue. "I didn't know it was the cold of spring." The teenager pretended to be relaxed and said, "These 4 words are not easy to use casually." The man patted his stomach with one hand and held the white jade belt around his waist with the other hand. He said with a smile, "It's natural when we get to the capital. It doesn't matter here. There are neither temple dogs nor Zhonghu wild dogs. No one will catch the king and bite him." Song Jixin asked curiously, "Are you afraid of being criticized?" The man asked, "In the Dali dynasty, the king has fought all over the mountain. If there is nothing to be afraid of, isn't it more comfortable than the man sitting on the dragon chair? Boy, do you think it's decent?" After a little thought and hesitation, Song Zhishan still made up his mind and asked, "Are you hiding your power and biding your time? Or are you raising the enemy's self-respect?" The man lost his smile, stretched out his hand and pointed to the sharp young man, shook his head and said, "You really dare to say that you don't know the importance and interests of these rebellious words? In the future, it's better to go to a fairy family residence on the mountain to avoid the limelight. I advise you not to do anything like this. Otherwise you will be unlucky." Song Jixin nodded and said, "I remember." The man pointed to the gold plaque. "Wind and water rise. Wind and water rise. The king asked you, water rise, how to start?" Song Jixin said neatly, "I don't know." The man muttered, "Knowing is knowing, and not knowing is knowing. What dog bullshit. A scholar is a playful person. If he farts, he has to make 9 twists and 18 turns. However, in the face of the youth, the man should be a little gentle. If I remember correctly, no matter how much flood has occurred in your town for 3,000 years, the highest water level of this stream has never been higher than the tip of the rusty sword." Song Jixin wondered. The old man who lives in the iron log well of Xinhua Lane does often talk to us under the locust tree. Is there really a mystery? The man stretched out his hand and pointed to the very far away, where the stream left the exit of the mountains. He smiled and said, "Among the mountains and forests, snakes have snake paths, and rats have rat paths. As for the rivers and streams, there are jiao paths." The man retracted his finger and patiently explained, "There are many Dali dynasties. In fact, there are many customs of hanging swords and the bridges in other places. However, those copper coin swords, Pitchword sword or talisman swords can often stop the mountain dragons from entering the river once, and can't stop the second time. Even many people who hang Dharma swords have shallow Taoism and can withstand the power of walking the river once, but annoy the dragon family in the flood. So the flood after that, the bridge that could not have collapsed, and the sword disappeared. Only this sword in this place, ... double quotes half the man said. He kept silent. Song Jigsun has endured no questioning. The man sighed and said, only this sword, from the first day hanging under the bridge, is not aimed at a dragon walking along the river, but is used by the sage to suppress the exit of the luck dragon well. The so-called exit is the deep pool under the bridge to prevent the dragon gas from overflowing and legs too fast, so as not to forcibly break this small world. Song Jigsun asked sharply, is the last real dragon in the world dead? Song Changjing said with a smile, in the battle of killing dragons 3,000 years ago, countless alchemists died. Even the saints of the three religions and hundreds of masters fell. Do you think all of them have holes in their brains? Or do the saints live on dogs for a long time? Deliberately keep the last real dragon as ordinary flowers, birds, fish and insects? Song Jigsun retorted, maybe you can't completely kill the real dragon. You can only use the method of delaying and nibbling. Although I don't know the original intention and plan of the sage thousands of years ago, I guess the real dragon is definitely not simple. After shaking his head, the man also nodded. You have right. There's no doubt that the real dragon is dead. As for its real identity and symbolic significance, the three words not simple can't bear it. Song Jigsun wanted to stop talking. In short, Dali has made all his plans and made countless efforts just for generating wind and water and for the great cause of going south in the future. The man took the lead to go up the steps and said slowly, if you ask me why the saints of 3,000 years want to kill dragons, I can't answer you. But if you ask me why I left you here and why you are the noble prince of Dali, I can tell you the truth. Song Jigsun lowered his head and couldn't see his expression clearly. When the boy didn't ask, the man naturally didn't be amorous. When he reached the highest level of the steps, he turned and faced the town. Later, he will be more generous, fight with Liu Xiaoyan and others, and even kill his heart. Don't you think it's cheap? Song Jigsun sat at the top of the steps, looked north with the man, and asked the question, are we Dali at the northernmost end of Dongbao Pingshu? The man nodded and said, well, he has been regarded as a barbarian in the north for nearly 1,000 years. Now it's just hard enough to win a little respect. Song Jigsun still lowered his head, but his eyes will haunt the man named Song Changjing said plainly. When you get to the capital, be careful of a man nicknamed the Embroidered Tiger. Song Jigsun was confused. Song Changjing said with a smile, he is now a national teacher of Dali and the mentor of your compatriot brother. In the past 50 years, Dali has changed from 70 counties and 100 cities to 140 counties and 1,500 cities. He deserves half the credit for the expansion of his territory. Song Jigsun suddenly looked up. The man smiled. Boy, you guessed right. The man also sat on the steps with his hands on his knees and looked up into the distance. Another contribution to Dali's opening up the territory is obvious. Far away and near in front of us, Song Jigsun was trembling and his scalp numb at this moment. After a long time, Song Jigsun suddenly said, Uncle, although I have a desire to kill Liu Xiaoyan, I even considered making a deal with Fu Nanhua of Lao Longking to let him find a way to kill Liu Xiaoyan. However, I never felt that Liu Xiaoyan was qualified to be on an equal footing with me. Even if he had a long history of family inheritance, I killed him. But I just felt that if I killed him, I didn't have to pay much price. Just that's all. Song Changjing had some interest. So, do you have another heart knot? The boy touched his neck and remained silent. In the middle of the night, there was silence. There were people walking in the street in the town. She was thin and thin. When she passed the iron log well of Xinhua Lane, she bit her teeth. When she passed the archway, she kicked a stone pillar. Finally, she came to the old locust tree with luxuriant branches. According to the old man, the tree didn't know how long it had lived, and no matter when dead branches fell, she never died will hit people. Very spiritual, thought the girl who swaggered to the bottom of the tree. Of course, despite these statements, she opened the ancient book borrowed from her child and began to follow the map. She reported her name one by one, like a general on the battlefield in autumn. When she was a little thirsty, she stopped to call the roll, took the local county chronicle called book outside the wall by Song Jackson in one hand, pointed to the locust tree in the other hand, looked up and scolded, "Give face. Don't you want face?" There was no reply. The girl immediately stamped her face and shouted abuse for surnames and 10 ethnic groups. Start with for surnames. Lu, Lei, Zhang and Song. Your for surnames. Be more interesting and familiar. Hurry up. At least 3 locust slaves will fall from each surname and 1 less locust slave. I won't you. Will be with you all my life. After going out, clean up one by one, regardless of whether you are young, women, children, old and young. Anyway, you're a group of white-eyed wolves who are not familiar with you and ungrateful. What else? The girl was out of breath, holding her waist with one hand, still swearing. The King Dali's surname Song Dart, who is the most meritorious man who can be named after you. Don't you can't pretend to be stupid with me. Believe it or not, as soon as I go out, let Dali's surname, Lu's surname, Zhao's surname, anything, but not Song. The top 10 families have 2 Sephora leads for each surname, and at least 1 for the other ordinary surnames. Of course, if anyone has the courage to bet, the more the better. I will let him make a pot full of profits later. The cow family of the 10 families. Yes, it's the cow family of the son of a bitch Kaoshi. This bastard didn't do anything disgusting in those years. When he was wearing open crotch pants, he was full of bad water. You must give me 1 more as a supplement except to locust slaves. Otherwise Wang Zhu vowed to let Kaoshi break his children and grandchildren after he went out. He dared to pee in the well. This kind of a moral devil is how did you become the real king of a country? And the Xi family. There is a guy named Xianxia in your family, right? Well, I have a little friendship with him. If it weren't for me, he would have been washed away by the flood. So you don't give another locust leaf. It's reasonable. In the distance, Che Jingchen quietly looked at the scene under the locust tree and said nothing. For example, a strict father who can only beat the board and teach his children a lesson has no choice but to treat a bigger and more arrogant child. But when he saw that the girl kept turning the book, and then the locust leaves that left the branches fell one after another to the pages of the book, Che Jingchen was a little relieved. After dozens of words, Che Jingchen only whispered, "After leaving home, be good." The girl seemed to feel something and suddenly looked back. No one was seeing. The girl was disappointed. She shook her head, no longer thought deeply, and turned back to scold Hawaii. Chen Ping and picked up the baskets and went ashore. He didn't know if it was an illusion. The boy felt that the water level in the stream seemed to have dropped a little. When he approached the bluish-green stone cliff, he suddenly stopped, because he clearly saw many people standing there, and each person's face was almost fine. The reason for this was not the bright stars, but a snow-white elk standing on the back of the green cow, glittering and shining, glowing with wisps of white light, like the aquatic grass shaking with the water in the stream. The white deer lowered her head. A little girl in a big red cotton-padded jacket stood on tiptoe and reached out to touch its endless. In addition, there are 2 young men and women in Taoist robes. I don't know whether it is the relationship reflected by the light of white deer. The skin of the men and women is better than snow and crystal clear. For example, if the people in the small town are natives kneaded with mud seeds, then the 2 foreign Taoists are exquisite porcelain made by firing. There is a world of difference. The style of men's and women's Taoist robes is somewhat similar to that of Lu Deishang, who set up a fortune-telling stall. And there are many different details. The Taoist crown is the most different. Lu Deishang is a lotus crown. The Taoist crown on the top of the 2 people's heads is shaped like a fish's tail. The straw sandal boy looked stunned. He just felt that the men and women standing next to the white deer were like characters coming out of the fairy hanging statue. It seemed that they would fly away in the next moment and pick up the stars and take the moon at your fingertips. The other 2 stood a little farther away. One of them, Chen Ping'an, knew that she was the daughter of Master Ruin, the sword maker. The girl in blue didn't carry a package full of food this time. She held a small embroidered handkerchief in one hand and only put a few exquisite and lovely cakes. The girl bowed her head and hesitated. She didn't know where to eat. The people around her were about 30 years old, carrying a long sword and a strange ornament hanging from her waist. When Chen Ping'an saw them, almost everyone noticed the sudden appearance of the straw sandal boy. The young Taoist nun was a little surprised, so she bent down and rubbed the little girl's head in a red cotton-padded jacket. While pointing in the direction of Chen Ping'an, she whispered. The little girl raised her ears to listen to the question of the fairy sister, opened her eyes and looked at her. After vaguely recognizing Chen Ping'an's appearance, he began to pour beans in a bamboo tube. He should be explaining Chen Ping'an's identity to the master of white deer and the fairy sister. At this moment, Chen Ping'an also recognized the 8 or 9-year-old girl. The first time he met was before he went to the kiln to burn porcelain. He once met a little girl with a horn braid in the mud bottle alley. He was very young and ran very fast. He had a kite in his hand and a thin leg of 2 thin bamboo sticks. He ran like the wind, which made Chen Ping'an memorable. Later, I saw it on and off several times. Once, the little girl was lying on the wellhead of the iron log well and secretly threw stones into it. Chen Ping'an accidentally bumped into her naughty behavior. The little girl was so scared that she ran away. She ran out for more than 10 steps before she remembered that the sugar gourd fell on the wellhead. She couldn't endure her greed, so she ran back to the iron log well. This time, it was too hasty and snapped. The whole person fell to the ground, stood up and grabbed the sugar gourd, then suddenly stopped, opened her mouth, reached out to pull out the shaky tooth and put it in her pocket. She didn't cry or make any noise, and continued to run without saying a word. That scene made Chen Ping'an sweat. The last time I saw her was in the dilapidated place of the statue of God with wheat. It was a dusk last autumn. Chen Ping'an left Longyao and returned to the town and strolled around. As a result, she saw her busy catching crickets rolling, jumping and fluttering around in the grass. When she saw Chen Ping'an, she obviously recognized Chen Ping'an, and another breeze fled away. Later, Chen Ping'an heard Gukan say that although this little sister, who was dirty all day, looked like a wild girl without control, she was actually from the Li family in Fulu Street, and she was not a servant girl. But I don't know why, she just likes to wander around alone, and her family doesn't care. When Gukan finally talked about her, she was full of pride and contempt. She said she didn't look fast. She was stupid. Once they happened to catch fish in the stream together. The fool was busy all afternoon before he caught a crab and didn't catch a slate fish. And the reason why she was able to catch the big crab was because the crab's claws gripped her fingers. Gukan said this in Chen Ping'an's room at that time. She smiled and rolled over her stomach on the small wooden bed. She said she was really stupid. She even deliberately raised her hand and showed off to him, as if it was great to catch a crab. The key was that she was obviously pinched by the crab, and was about to cry at that time. The handsome young Taoist glanced at the white deer and said with a smile to the young Taoist nun, "Elder martial sister he, please be careful. Don't spoil it too much. It's only less than 10 days. Besides, it's just a cover-up, and it doesn't hinder its freedom. You just don't listen. What should I do now?" After listening to the little girl's introduction, the Taoist nun with a charming posture smiled and said, "Let nature take its course." The young Taoist frowned and looked up again. After one look, he looked at it carefully for a moment. He really couldn't see that the straw sandal boy with a basket on his back had any good atmosphere. Although their ability to see Chen and find dragons and point acupoints in the sector was not the best in the continent, he was also quite good at it. Since the Taoist could replace the sector to get back the winning things, he is also responsible for bringing back the treasure of Xianxia safely and submitting it to Xianxia in the future. Of course, he is by no means a thing in the pool. Therefore, when he doesn't see that the teenager has too many strange things, he doesn't have the mind to attract him into the mountain gate. The young Taoist is good at looking at the appearance and doesn't think he will look at the wrong person. Their school is one of the 3 Taoists in Dongbao Pingshu, and the first one in the continent. They are extremely noble. He and the elder martial sister he went out of the mountain together this time. As a reward, Each of them has a valuable place to recruit true disciples for the sect. At the same time, this disciple will be accepted by them as disciples, so he doesn't want to squander a will and must be treated with caution. Everyone in the sect knows that the older martial sister he has renewed her mind, so an understatement of letting nature take its course is likely to move the idea of accepting disciples. He and his Xianxia, known as the Golden Virgin of Dongbao Pingshu and the proud daughter of Yizhou Taoism, are the kings of the world. When they meet them, they should also treat them with courtesy, and the importance of etiquette is not inferior to the real monarch of a great country, because they are the most promising spiritual talents in a continent. At that time, the young Taoist took the little girl's hand and walked down the back of the green bull together. The psychic white deer followed behind. Not only the young Taoist with the younger martial brother was surprised, but also the strategist giant with a tiger amulet on his waist and a long sword on his back. When he saw the young Taoist coming slowly, Chen Ping'an had a big head. Now the boy really didn't want to deal with these immortals from other places, because Chen Ping'an knows that their simple love, hate, joy and anger will determine their own life and death, honor and disgrace. Moreover, Chen Ping'an knows that his luck has never been too good, so he is even more afraid to provoke them. However, Chen Ping'an did not run away because of this. On the contrary, he walked a symbolic distance forward. In this way, it was decent to fall in the eyes of others. The white deer quickened its pace slightly, trotted to it, walked around the straw sandal boy, finally lowered its head and took the initiative to rub the poor boy. The white deer returned to its master. She gently touched its back, and the next moment it became the posture of a horse. Call a deer a horse. The young Taoist looked at Chen Ping'an, sighed slightly, smiled and said a word, and then looked down at the little girl in a red cotton-padded jacket. The little girl interpreted it as a small-town dialect and said timidly, "Sister," he said, "you're a person who cherishes happiness, but it's a pity that you and I have a shallow relationship and can't be Taoist friends." The boy was speechless because he didn't know what to say. With baskets on his back, straw sandals and trousers rolled up, the appearance of a teenager is particularly funny. The Taoist asked with a smile, "Do you know the wonderful use of these stones?" Chen Ping'an, "Don't worry. I'm just asking casually." The little girl copied the explanation, spoke fast and had a clear voice. Chen Ping'an hesitated and nodded. "A Taoist priest reminded me that I can often come to the stream to pick up stones and catch fish, even if Chen Ping'an is interested in the young woman's crown. As a precaution, even though Dale Chen's last name has not been revealed. Moreover, it is Ning Yao who really reveals the secret and points out the valuable snake gallstone." The Taoist nun smiled and said, "Do you know our little martial Uncle Lu?" 2. Chen Ping'an was stunned. The Taoist nun smiled knowingly and roughly explained, "Uncle Lu, strictly speaking, is not the same clan as us. It's just that Taoist priest Lu visited our clan many years ago and made friends with one of our uncle's peers. After many years of being familiar with him, we younger generation naturally get used to being commensurate with him." Chen Ping'an grinned and completely lost his vigilance. The straw sandal boy is grateful to the chief Lu and will never forget it in his life. He thought of one thing, bent down and put down the basket, picked up one of the stones he fell in love with at first sight, which was as big as an egg, green and clear as ice, very different from other snake gallstones, handed it to the young Taoist with Yulin temperament, and asked, "Taoist priest, if you see Taoist priest Lu in the future, can you help me give him this stone?" After hearing the little girl's explanation, she thought a little, took the stone and said slowly, "Before coming here, I just met the little martial uncle who left. He was going to Nanjian country to attend an important ceremony of Datong said that it's hard to say when to meet next time, but as long as I see Uncle Lu, I'll transfer it to him for you." Chen Ping'an listened to the little girl's words, smiled brightly, and bowed down to thank the beautiful young Taoist for the good or bad of strangers. Teenagers always believe in their intuition, like Fu Nanhua, Cai Jinjian, Lu Deisheng, and Miss Ning. Chen Ping'an took out another snake gallstone and handed it to her again. Among the younger generation of Dongbao Pingshu, the Taoist female crown, known as the first chance, didn't refuse, smiled and accepted it, and didn't forget to thank him. The little girl in red cotton padded jacket twisted the corners of her clothes with both hands and whispered, "I want one, too," with a smile. Chen turned around and went to pick stones from the basket for the little girl. The little girl ran to him and said carefully, "I want a bigger one. You okay?" Chen said with a smile, "As long as you can move, I'll give you the largest one, but it's no close to the town and home. And I think these big ones in the basket are not as good as the small ones." She thought for a while and laid her hands on the edge of the basket. "Well, I'll choose a small and beautiful one." Chen picked a small stone with lotus root pink dot. It was moist and lovely. The little girl held it in the palm of her hand and was very satisfied. She suddenly tilted her head, grinned, pointed to her teeth, and then smiled at Chen with a proud face. "Guess she's showing off that her teeth are straight again." Chen said happily, "Next time we'll catch crickets together." The little girl's eyes brightened, but soon darkened, smiled and nodded. Chen picked up the basket, said goodbye to the young Taoist, waved to the little girl and trotted back to the town alone. It is also a fairy. The gold content of this young woman's crown is far from comparable to that of Xianxia in Xianxia mountain. It is almost the gold essence of a mortal family compared with secular gold. She took the little girl and the white deer back to Chen Yu's back. The young Taoist took back his scythe from the back of the straw sandal boy, covered the coffin and said, "A shallow edge is a thin blessing. Naturally, it is not suitable for great use. There are as many Taoist sects in Dongbao Pingshu as cattle here. Every 30 years, a pair of golden boys and girls will be selected. He and his elder martial sister Xianxia are natural Taoist couples of this generation. However, surprising things have happened. The golden boy's qualification is no less than that in the past. But the jade girl's good luck is simply appalling. When she was born, there was a white deer with one of the auspicious signs. She took the initiative to go out of the mountains and rivers, came to her to recognize the Lord, and then set foot in the avenue of practice. It seemed that she had never been bumpy and had a smooth journey. Some even threatened that she would encounter the first bottleneck only after she was among the 5 realms. She refused to comment on the younger martial brother's contempt for the straw sandal boy and left it off. At this time, a little boy came from the deep pool under the corridor bridge to the puddle under the back of the green bull. He only held a snake gallstone in his hand. He was as brilliant as a white deer in the night, holding a stone. The wooden boy stood on a stone exposed to the water, like an indomitable immortal, holding a pocket full moon. The 2 big black and red fish kept by the young Taoist don't go into the water, but only swim on the stream and walk slowly. If Chen sees this young man, he will know that he is the grandson of mother-in-law Ma in Xinhua Lane. Young people have dementia since childhood and are despised by their parents when they are very young. Mother Ma takes her grandchildren with her. Young people are very unsocial and often climb to the roof alone to look at the clouds. From childhood to adulthood, the young man's surname Ma, who followed Ma's mother-in-law, was bullied until the end. He felt that stepping on his shoes was too dirty. The poor child seemed to have only smiled at Jigui, the maid in Mud Bottle Lane. Therefore, mother-in-law Ma will especially hate the maid and think that she is a shameless coquette. She must have taken the initiative to seduce her baby grandson. The young lady went to the man with the long sword and asked, "There is really no room for maneuver about Ma Kaxuan." The man said coldly, "If you really want to take this child as a mountain opening disciple, why don't you come by yourself? What if his name is Lad? He hasn't fought with me. Why should he give it to him? If he's not convinced, he'll come to Shanwo Mountain to find me. If he wins, let him take the child." The young Taoist smiled and said, "It's nothing more than asking our little martial uncle to come one more time. Why bother to come? There is a needle in it." The man with the sword hanging side narrowed his eyes. "Oh." The young lady was a little stuffy. She glanced at the younger martial brother of the same school. The young Taoist laughed and didn't tit for tat with the man. She looked up and said, "It's a nice moonlight today." She was a little helpless. As long as it comes to the little martial uncle who belongs to his family, let alone her and younger martial brother, I'm afraid all young Taoists in the continent are proud. On the other side of the corridor bridge, under the steps, stood a barefoot monk with a square face and the look of perseverance. Instead of looking up at the gold plaque, the ascetic monk looked at the ground where the incense was inserted in the previous Sangji, folded his hands, bowed his head, and said compassionately, Amitabha. The little boy went ashore and came to the back of the green bull. He looked at two young Taoist priests, and then looked at the man with the sword on his back. Finally, he stared at the latter who wanted to hang the tiger amulet, gnashing his teeth, and said, I don't want to learn the way of longevity. Can you teach me to kill people? The man smiled proudly and said, My military sword repair has been the first in the world since ancient times. The young Taoist also said with a smile. Well, the young lady shook her head, knowing that the overall situation had been decided. She felt guilty for failing to live up to the trust of little martial uncle. For a time, on the back of the green cattle by the river, the sword was drawn and the atmosphere was dignified. The little girl in the red cotton padded jacket of the Li family quickly hid behind the fairy sister. The girl in blue had just finished the last piece of cake. She was in a bad mood and didn't have a good way. You have the ability to call my father. The man who had a great relationship with the girl and her father no longer wore a straight face and said with a smile, How to fight? The young Taoist jumped. Ruins you. This is a bit of bullying. Your father is the next in to succeed Mr. Dao Chen. Just like the master of this world. The girl in blue turned her mouth and didn't speak. The monk came slowly and climbed onto the back of the green bull. The young lady said, The thunder tower of your Buddhism, the seal of our Taoist heavenly master, a small sword tomb of the strategists, and, of course, the mountain jade plague of Confucianism, the four winning objects left by the first for saints, not to mention how they collude with each other within the Confucianism itself. Bet only the three of us take them back this time. Although it is justified, it would be wrong if we really didn't say hello to Mr. Dao Jian. Is it inappropriate? The monk said nothing. The young Taoist said anxiously, It's a little inhumane, but it's hard to disobey the will of the leader. Elder Marshal sister, you'd better not paint a snake and that enough. The strategist sneered. I'm not here to get close to anyone. On the other side of the town, Chen Ping'an returned to the lane where Liu Xiaonyang's house was located. As a result, he saw Mr. Dao just standing at the door. The young man ran quickly. Before he asked, Che Jingchen gave him his private seal and said with a smile, Chen Ping'an, it's not for nothing. I have something to ask. If Xianxia Academy is in trouble in the future, I hope you can help as much as you can. Of course, you don't have to deliberately inquire about the news of the academy. The boy said only one word. Okay. Che Jingchen nodded and said in earnest, Remember what I told you before. A gentleman will not save. That's what I said from the bottom of my heart. Not testing people's hearts. The teenager grinned. Sir, I can't guarantee this. Che Jingchen was about to stop talking at last. He didn't say anything and was about to leave. He originally wanted to say that if there is a big dilemma in Xianxia Academy in the future, Chen Ping'an, you need not feel guilty. You just don't sing or hear. So you don't have to do it deliberately. But Che Jingchen didn't know why deep in his heart. He had a chance. Even he couldn't understand it after thinking about it. The mountain master of Xianxia Academy had only one answer. It's just because of the young man in front of us. His surname is Chen and his name is Ping'an. He doesn't seem like anyone. It's very difficult for you to entrust him. Even if you know that you can't do it with all your strength in the end, you can be sure of one thing, as long as he agrees, he will do it. If he can't do it with great strength, he's willing to bite his teeth and exert 12 points of strength. This is a reassuring thing. This was something Che Jingchen had been begging for many years, but could not do. The scholar who took the initiative to ask for relegation here only thought that heaven and earth were foreign places everywhere. When Che Jingchen was about to turn around, the boy with a basket on his back quickly bowed and saluted with great difficulty. In the alley, the Confucian sage gave a gift to the young man.